Our next speaker and our closing keynote is Mitch Kapor, Silicon Valley legend. I think that's the way I introduce him. But let's give him a bit of a bio and we'll bring him on the stage. So Mitch Kapor is a pioneer of the revolution of personal computers and the founder of Lotus Development Corporation. He paved the way for personal computer ubiquity in the business world. Mr. Kapor was the first chair and current board member of the Mozilla Foundation and creator of Firefox, an open source web browser. Currently, Mr. Kapor is a trustee of the Mitchell Kapor Foundation. This private foundation focuses on fairness and equity, specifically low-income communities of color. Throughout the years, Mr. Kapor has contributed articles about his impact on personal computing on society to the New York Times, Forbes, and the Huffington Post. Let's bring Mitch up to the stage now. Hello, Mitch. Sorry about that.
Hi.
Fantastic to have you. I'll bring your slides up and I'll disappear and you can get started whenever you'd like.
Thank you so much. Great to be here virtually. I would say nice to see all of you, but I only see you virtually. I titled my talk today, The Future We Want to Have. And it's my observation. I'm going to time myself for 30 minutes, by the way, so I don't go over. If you're an educator, if you're a teacher, you have to be a kind of an optimist. You have to believe in the possibility of a better future. Otherwise, why would you be teaching the students what you're teaching them? And I want to talk about the future we want to have in technology, in computing, in computer science, and in software development. But first, we're going to start a little bit where I came from. Next slide, please. So the kid sitting at the teletype, that's me in 1966, so 56 years ago. I was fortunate at age 15 to be in a summer program sponsored by the National Science Foundation at a time when the US was desperately trying to catch up to the Russians who were winning the space race. So they were funding programs for, quote, gifted and talented. This really meant boys, not girls at that time, and really just white boys. But there we were, and it was my first exposure to computers, and it literally changed my life, access to that opportunity. And it left a lifelong impression. It put me on the path in life that I got on. By the way, the computer is the thing to the right that looks like the giant oil burner. And if you took 100,000 of those, you would still have less computing power than is in my Apple Watch. But that was then, and that's how I got started. Next slide, please. Long career, done lots of things. In the 80s, Lotus Development Corporation, Lotus 123. It is, as you heard in the intro, the product really that drove the adoption of the desktop computer in the US and globally. Today, Kapor Center is in Oakland, California, which houses 3 organizations, all of which work at the intersection of technology and social justice on the education side, which I'll be telling you about, and on the investing side, and in doing research, which you'll also hear about. Next slide. I started out with having my values on display at the very beginning. This interest in the intersection of tech and social justice, not a new thing. This excerpt on this slide came from the business plan I submitted to my venture capitalist when I was trying to raise money for Lotus. And I said, I'm unwilling to operate a priori in an over-aggressive, profit-only centered style. I knew that's who I was deep in my heart. And despite having heard how greedy and avaricious venture capitalists were, I figured I better just put it out there because I didn't want to go into business with someone who didn't understand who I was or what I was trying to accomplish. And it's been an amazing ride, because what we've done in software and technology, it's literally changed the world. We're all part of that. But yet, it leaves me with a very uneasy feeling. Next slide, please. On the one hand, technology absolutely is driving the national economy in the US and the global economy. 1.9 trillion in economic output from the tech sector just in the US. And I will apologize, this is a much more US-centric presentation than I would have done had I understood that this is a global audience. But I will make verbal annotations as I go. So tech is a very big deal. That's the good news. Next slide, please. And amazing things continue to happen. This is an image that some of you may be familiar with, but it was generated entirely by AI. The user simply typed in the text, draw a photorealistic image of an astronaut riding a horse. And this image was synthesized, created, did not exist previously. This is this amazing program called DALL-E, D-A-L-L-E. They're just actually opening up to an open beta and letting in the first 1 million people. And you could type in anything and it will draw something like it. And it's like, how does it do that? Where does this go? To me, just stunning. Next slide, though. Next slide, please. But in practice, if you look at how artificial intelligence programs are being used in practice today, they're doing things like a bad job at facial recognition, mismatching images in the database to people, resulting in the arrest and imprisonment of wrong people. Now, you might ask, how does that happen? Well, as you may know, all of this machine learning depends on huge training sets of images that are used to train the AI to do whatever recognition task it's asking. And if that data set is in any way biased, the results of the performance of the system are going to be off. And in fact, in the data sets that were used to train up this facial recognition, there was a significant underrepresentation of people of color in it. Is just inaccurate and doesn't do a good job. Now, these things are being fixed, but this is a life and death matter. And so we're not doing a terrific job there in the tech industry. Next slide, please. And in fact, what somebody's called the Frankenstein effect is the unintended consequences of all of the tech and tech startups that particularly, but not limited to social networks that have gone out there in terms of the amplification of misinformation and the ways in which the dynamics of the big social media platforms are actually increasing radicalization and leading to things like the January insurrection. Tech is in part, not solely, responsible for this, not the sort of thing we want to see. So we have to ask, well, how the heck did that happen and what can we do about it? And particularly if you are trading young people and giving them their first exposure to computers and starting them on their path, what might you say and do that will have an effect down the road? I think we have to look at this. Next slide, please. Well, there are many factors at play into how tech gets to be tech, but it is very clear that the tech sector is overwhelmingly white and male. In the U.S., in Europe, in the geographies that are producing much or most of the software that everybody is using. And there's a significant underrepresentation of women and people of color. This underrepresentation is very material, because who has a seat at the table really matters. Who is participating in the design, who is making the artifacts that we're all using really matters. Next slide, please. There has been a great deal of talk in tech industry in the past years about the need to increase diversity. But if you look at the numbers, they're really not improving very much in terms of are the workforces at the Googles and Metas and Apples and so on, are they more reflective of the communities and populations being served? They're not. The needle is barely moving, which is really unfortunate. Next slide. We think that this lack of diversity is something that really needs to be understood, because it's a kind of a systemic problem. And if you don't understand the dynamics by which it's produced, you're not going to have much success in fixing it. And we think it starts all the way back at K-12 and runs through there and higher ed and into the tech workplace and into the startup ecosystem. There are, in this pipeline, there are a complex set of structural and social, psychological barriers or leaks. And we're losing talent at each stage in the pipeline. And that is a very significant issue. And it starts back in the classroom. Next slide, please. I have US data here. Again, I apologize, but I think this is broadly representative of not just the US, but other countries as well. So in 2020, more than half of US high schools still did not offer any CS courses at all. Next slide. And in fact, if you look at the funding for education, there are still enormous racial disparities in the US as well. Schools that have a high proportion of low-income students and low-income students of color are 2x less likely to offer any computer science courses and 3x less likely to offer APCS. So even where it is offered, it is disproportionately available to those who have more and families that are more affluent, and less available if not. And that, in my view, is a huge problem. Next slide. And I covered this too. Give me the next slide too. Thank you. So the question you might ask is, oh, this is pretty grim. Is this hopeless? Is Mitch just going to tell you that this is all, is he going to just complain or whine or say, no, I am not. I have a positive view on this. And really what I want to talk about is the bright side, the upside, and how we get from where we are to that better world. Next slide, please. I want to talk a little bit about an organization which has had a huge influence on me called SMASH, Summer Math and Science Honors Academy. Started 20 years ago by my brilliant wife, Frida Kapor Klein, and very much still in operation in the present. Next slide, please. So SMASH is a free multi-year STEM and computer science career prep program oriented to underrepresented students of color. It gives a kind of academic, helps close the academic preparation gap, helps build confidence and life skills for success. It has a very heavy computer science and software development emphasis, covers all 3 summers in high school, and we've extended it now to a college internship program, and it takes place on campuses like UC Berkeley and Stanford, Morehouse and Spelman in Atlanta, University of Michigan, and 5 more. And it has amazing outcomes, 100% high school graduation rate, 85% college graduation rate, and a very, I think about 5x the rate of students who go through SMASH persist in STEM and CS than people who do not. So off the charts numbers. It has been a huge influence on me, and I have learned so much from that. That's what I want to share. Next slide. So now, the image on the left, I showed this at the beginning. This was me in '66 with my first exposure to computers. And over here on the right is a woman named Hailey Shavers. This photo was taken in 2011 when she was in high school in a SMASH program at a computer, learning to program. And I should tell you that Hailey works for Slack today and is doing quite well. And I understood something. I understood it is all about opportunity. It's all about access. And this was a kind of a light bulb moment for me. Next slide. And I encapsulated it, and I've been saying this for a decade, by in the sentence, genius or talent, but let's say genius here, is evenly distributed by zip code, that's postal code for people outside the US, but access and opportunity are not. And my experience with the SMASH scholars over the last 20 years is that if you give kids the opportunity and the chance to show what they can do and the support, they will blow you away every single time with what they can do. You can help unlock the future for these kids. And it's our responsibility and our obligation to do that. And to the extent we do that, we are making for a future that everyone can participate in and everyone can be a contributor to. Next slide. So I give a few thoughts about observations on how computer science and programming is taught today, and where I think it needs to go. It used to be the case that CS was viewed as sort of a nice to have for a specialized group of students. I think we now understand that every student really ought to have basic computational fluency and literacy just as a part of their education, basic education, regardless of the path in life that they follow. And those who have an aptitude and an interest, every single one of them for doing more should be afforded that opportunity as early as possible. And it's part of the reason why I wanted to come and talk today, because I know that you as educators are the torchbearers, are helping to make that happen. Where I will go out, perhaps for some of you, on a bit of a limb, not for me, but I want to acknowledge it, is the view that I don't think you could view CS education as some kind of abstract, technical, or apolitical endeavor. I think it needs to bring issues of power and justice and race into the classroom and in teaching and learning. How else are we going to educate young people in ways that when they're actually out there making the software that runs the world and that we all use, that it is fair to everyone and not biased and not creating more of the kinds of problems that we're all suffering from. One more slide, please. Next slide. So when viewing CS education in this kind of way through an equity lens, I think there are some simple principles that apply, and they apply at all levels, from the classroom to the school system, to the school district, to state and national policy. I think we have to pay attention to these issues of who has access and who does not, and we have to level the playing field there. We have to address very foundational education disparities in funding and the quality of schools everywhere, and that the CS instruction that we do should be culturally responsive to the kids in their lives and their issues and problems that they face. It should be meaningful to them, because that is what is going to motivate them even more to master the material. And we have to invest in our educators to be able to do this kind of work. We can't expect people just to magically figure this out on their own. And I think most important, we need to include the perspectives and experiences of students in everything we do. I've learned so much listening to the SMASH scholars and hearing them. We do project-based learning in SMASH. And so we'll pose the problem to the students like, design a piece of software, which is to say wireframe it and prototype it, that addresses a problem in your school or community. And the kinds of things that the kids come up with are completely amazing. They come up with, okay, how do I find a safe way to walk home from school? I want to take Google Maps and I want to overlay on it police incidents data to show me where the latest hotspots are, so I can find a way around. And I've seen them do these kinds of developments, and it is amazing and impressive. And I have seen them go on to college and do their internships and pursue kinds of work in which they get to work on and address these kinds of issues using the tools that they have learned. And so my wish, my plea is really one of saying, let's all be on this journey. Let's help train the next generation, give them full access, give them every opportunity, and let us stand back and as they help make the world a better place. Thank you so much for your time. I think I have time for a few questions, and questions have been coming in on the chat, and I'm going to take a quick look at them here. And great. I think I have 5 minutes or so. David, you could tell me if I'm
oh, you're good, Mitch. You take as long as you need with those.
Great. Okay. So some of our student guests have asked if I could expand on the types of computers you had available when you founded Lotus. Yes. So the dominant computer at the time Lotus was founded was the Apple II, not the Macintosh, but the original Steve Jobs, Steve Wozniak, 64K of RAM personal computer. And the new entrant on the scene was the IBM PC, which came out in 1982. Very powerful machine with a 16-bit processor and 640 kilobytes of memory. And that was the target for the first version of Lotus 1, 2, 3. Yeah, they're definitely antiques. Definitely antiques. What do I think about the fact that some companies evaluate applicants for jobs by the number of diplomas or titles which they have? Should they not be educated by their knowledge? Excellent observation. We talk a lot about the importance of what we call distance traveled, meaning you look at where somebody starts out in life from, and what hurdles and barriers have they already overcome that demonstrates their capabilities. You know, a pedigree, having a diploma from a prestige university, that's actually neither here nor there. Some people have been in a life where they have access to that and have that, but it doesn't really tell you everything you would want to know, whereas the distance traveled is very, very significant. So yeah, I think companies in hiring need to look more at skills and competencies and capabilities and less at pedigrees. Okay, have I seen, there's a question about a Lotus 123 project by Travis Ormandy. I saw that somebody did a port of Lotus 123 to a modern version of Linux, which I thought was pretty cool. So it could run. But Lotus 123 is a 40-year-old product going back to its origins. There have been many generations of spreadsheets. The first was VisiCalc, which really invented the genre and was a work of genius. And Lotus came along and we put it on business desktops around the world. And then Microsoft came with Excel for Windows in the Windows environment. That was dominant. And then today, people who are learning often use Google Sheets or something else. They're in a fully online collaborative kind of environment. And no doubt there will be even more successors down the road. Lots of people asking what they can do to encourage the teaching of CS in their countries or local areas. Yeah, that's a big, a big question. I could tell you a little bit about what actually worked in the U.S. in the hope that it will be might be inspiring. At the Kapor Center on our foundation side, the team there, led by the brilliant Dr. Allison Scott, has been doing research for many years on just the availability of computer science in schools. And we were the first to publish, this is several years ago now, this startling fact that the more Black and brown faces in a high school in the state of California, the less likely the school they went to offered computer science. It was a kind of a strictly proportional relationship. And when those research results were taken up through the education organizations that promote computer science education, it actually went up to the legislature, and new laws were passed to do a number of things to make the offering of computer science more equitable. So I would say documenting the current state, what is and is not the case, and bringing it to those who have the power of the purse strings and control what's done in the school systems is certainly a powerful move. It's also a powerful move to start your own if you can, and not wait for bureaucratic systems to respond. But it is, it's challenging. I mean, I think the good news is there are lots of free tools like Replit for education and others that are reducing the cost of doing it. But we still need teachers, and we still need school systems that support those activities. So concludes the question queue. Again, thank you so much for your time. Thank you for everything that you do, and please keep it up. David, back to you.
Thank you very much, Mitch. I think I speak for everyone here in saying somebody that's an absolute legend in our eyes, speaking to us and telling us about all the things that we can do to make things better in education is inspiring. So thank you so much.
You're welcome.
I just want to say that one of my earliest memories of being interested in computers is my father gushing about Lotus 123 and me as a young man wanting to find out more. So thank you so much.
Very welcome.
Thank you, Mitch. Bye.
Okay.